On the street there's a code, but in the courtroom there's a code. And it's a code which is very much set against you when you're charged with murder and manslaughter. They don't know what happens in the courtroom. And sadly, by the time young men are seeing me, they're in real trouble. They don't know what happens in the courtroom. On the street there's a code, but in the courtroom there's a code. And it's a code which is very much set against you when you're charged with murder and manslaughter. All of the resources that the Crown Prosecution Service have, the police have, the judiciary have, is all on you. I do most of my work at the Old Bailey. It's the #1 court in the country dealing with the most serious criminal matters. I've been doing this job for 25 years. And for the first time, I'm sad to be representing predominantly young black men charged with murder and manslaughter. Hundreds of lives ruined, unfulfilled potential. There may be some notoriety in being in a famous court where many historic cases have been heard, but it comes with unspoken fear by those on trial. I get to see the young men who have all the bravado out on the street, but when they're in the courtroom, when they're down in the cells at the Old Bailey waiting to speak to me, they are trembling. They're children. Their children appearing in an adult court. They are petrified. They might not say it, but even with the young man I was representing, his hands were trembling. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm scared. You're about to go and give evidence for your life." A jury of 12 men and women selected at random and a senior judge, 12 people who don't even know you, know nothing about your circumstances, but they may judge you on the way that you speak, they may judge you on the way that you appear, they may judge you because of something they read in the paper last week, or even the same morning on their way to court about someone being stabbed. You're putting your life as a young person in those 12 people's hands. And I mean your life. They don't even understand that when you get into the courtroom, it's complex. It's not street language. It's legal principles, concepts. Things like bad character applications, where if you've been in trouble before carrying a knife, the prosecution will seek to introduce that evidence against you to say that you have a propensity to carry a weapon. Therefore, a jury can draw the inference that you're more likely to be guilty than not. Liability of secondary parties and principals. All the things about joint enterprise. If you're there and someone gets stabbed and you happen to be next to him, easy for the prosecution to say you were part and parcel of a joint enterprise to murder X. The same scenario of the case I did. 2 people, 1 person stabs, causes the fatal wound, but 2 people are on trial for murder. Joint enterprise. Anonymous witnesses, people who come forward who are perhaps too scared to be named, but the court process allows them to give evidence from behind a screen where you don't even get to see them. Assisting and encouragement of the principal. All of these legal concepts that they use cell site analysis so they can track your phone to see where you were in the moments before someone was murdered, to say you must have been with these people because you were with them an hour before. These young people have no idea. Unanimous majority verdicts. 12 people get to decide your future. And then if the court case goes on long enough, then it can be by majority. You're talking about your life. You are literally on trial for your life. Mandatory sentences. Young kids carrying knives. I don't mind. I can bust that. I can do 6 months. It's no problem. But when you're convicted of murder, like the young 17-year-old who was last week in the case I just finished, 17, convicted of murder, and I looked in his family's face who was sitting in the public gallery, realizing that she sees her son as a teenager, but she won't see him till he's a 40-something-year-old man. Life sentence. It's a mandatory sentence for murder. That means that once you're found guilty, the minimum sentence they will impose for a knife crime is 20 to 25 years, and that's all of it. If you use a gun, it's 30 years. And then you're only liable to be released, not at halfway. You do 30 years, then the parole board decide whether or not you're eligible to be released. Hidden sentences. There are no winners. When that verdict came in, one boy's been convicted of your son's murder, another one walks free. But for them, that's not justice. It's a great result for me. It's great PR for me, the defense lawyer who got a guy off murder. It was the right result. But there are no winners. Deceased families, they're serving a life sentence. They'll never be the same. They'll never, ever be the same. Defendants' unfulfilled ambitions through 20 to 30 years in prison. By the time they come out, cars might even be floating. The world will be completely different. We live in a technological age where things are advancing so quickly. You go in as a 17-year-old, you come out as a middle-aged man. Institutionalized with few options in an ever-changing world, poor income and employment opportunities. If it was bad enough before you went in, it's going to be even worse when you come out as a middle-aged 40-something-year-old young black man or old black man with no education in a world you don't even recognize. They don't get it. We need to fix it. It's vital, because as we found out here, there are so many issues, too many issues. But where no hope is left no fear. Some of these kids on the street are fearless until they get in the courtroom. Then they realize that you are talking about the rest of their life. They won't be walking Pond Road, as the youngsters would say. They're done. They're institutionalized. They've been tied in knots by lawyers like me, but some even brighter than me, who Oxford and educated, Eton School, speak the Queen's English, will turn you inside out when you're in that witness box. Because you haven't had the education you should have had, you can't even answer in your own defense, because the way in which they're asking questions, you look bamboozled. You don't even understand it. Speaking the Queen's English and you say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. That's what they're facing. There are focus areas that we all need to look at, and we've tried to do that this evening. There must be parental involvement and accountability. Reforming the exclusion policy and addressing early signs at primary school level. I do so much speaking events at primary school, because primary schools are calling me saying, we have issue with young people carrying knives at primary school. Empowering the youth by giving them real alternatives and options through proper investment. When I was growing up, we had youth clubs, we had things to do. We live in a different world, but the government is squeezing people. And where there's no economic input from the government, we're seeing the breakdown in the community. Greater police involvement at community level. We have to learn to trust the police. The police have a very difficult job to do. And I actually believe, even though I'm a defense lawyer, there should be tougher sentencing for certain serious offenses. Because if you're habitually carrying a knife, I think if you're told you're going to get 10 years and you're doing 10 years straight, you're going to think about it. But we have a real problem. And when I first started out, I was defending proper villains, old white men doing armed robberies and things. I spend most of my time representing young children. And I wail at night. Sometimes I literally cry. Well, during my 4 weeks at the Old Bailey, I would go down in the cells, and every day, 5 courts running, boys all charged with murder, multiple defendants, and all I could see was 30 to 40 young black lives ruined. And it's happening on a daily basis. Our young black men are being incarcerated and they're being removed from their communities in an alarming rate. And if you won't even feel it more, go to Feltham Young Offenders Institute. It's a place I hate to go. You've been given your life back, press the reset button, start again. I'm here for as long as you need me to be here. And all of us, it's incumbent on all of us in this community to take young people under our wing, listen to them, engage with them, understand them, and hopefully we can not perhaps eradicate the whole problem, but we can save a young person's life so that they can go on and fulfill the destiny that they've been called for. Thank you. Street, there's a code, but in the courtroom there's a code. And it's a code which is very much set against you when you're charged with murder and manslaughter. They don't know what happens in the courtroom